Welcome to the Cyber Call, the podcast by Ride of Boom for managed service providers looking to stay ahead in an ever-changing world of cybersecurity. Each week, we dive into the latest threats, trends, and real-world strategies to help MSPs protect their clients and grow their businesses. Let's build a safer, stronger community together.
All right, welcome. Happy Monday to the first one in August. Jonathan, we are sailing through 2026, aren't we?
We truly are. Happy August, Andrew.
Yeah, man. Crazy.
When you start to see Halloween decorations.
Yeah.
It's blinked. Yeah, it's crazy.
Up here in the Northeast, you start seeing pumpkin beer.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Aaron's moving to, if it's an IPA, I think Aaron's moving up to the Northeast, right, Aaron? Are you there? You're
No.
on mute, bud. You might be on mute.
Man, he's already fumbled the ball, man. It's embarrassing.
I'm powered by IPAs.
Fantastic. All right. Let's as folks come on in today, let's do a touch of banter, some news going on. Let's kick it off, Aaron, with something you brought to our attention, and that is these cold wallets holding your Bitcoin that, typically are, if you're a hardcore, I'm never going to sell hodl type. Is it hodl or hodl? I always forget, Aaron. But
Whatever you prefer. Hodl. I like hodl.
All right, hodl. Talk to us about what happened here, because this isn't too good.
Yeah, and I start with, this is not cold wallet FUD, right? Like, it's definitely better to keep your crypto in a cold wallet. This is more of like a community announcement if you use this particular cold wallet. If you haven't withdrawn your BTC by now, it's probably too late. A lot of folks use this particular wallet, the cold card, because it was less expensive and had a large open source component. And I'm a big fan of open source. It gives folks a view into your code so that you don't just have to trust them, but someone likely through their AI agent at the open source code and found a randomization vulnerability. It was a single line of code that allowed the attacker to start guessing passphrases and was able to crack, $70 million in Bitcoin directly from wallets within the first 24 hours.
Wow. Is it untraceable, Aaron, if you had to guess? Like, whoever's doing it, is it going to be tough to find it?
I mean, it's all going to the same wallet right now. Right. And so people will be watching that wallet forever. And depending on how good they are at laundering crypto from wallets, this is why you see threat actors return money, because they'll reach out potentially to the company and say, hey, we'll give you, 90% of your funds back as long as you don't investigate. And so there is a slight chance because they know eyes are going to be on this wallet forever.
Okay.
And it's pretty new. And so there are people, there's people that work for law firms, and there's people that deal with this stuff. And I guarantee you this amount of money, law enforcement is involved. So unless these guys are really quick about getting that crypto spun out of there, we'll see how successful they are at keeping any of it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Speaking of AI and using it to crack vulnerabilities and all the chatter on Mythos and etc. Aaron, I'll kick this off with you and then go around the horn. So there's this website called arena.ai. It's a think tank of sorts, if you will, out of the University of Berkeley. And what they do is they aggregate information on the models, the LLMs, and you can see the votes. So this isn't what they think. This is literally what people are saying in comparison. And, we're seeing, Kimi K3 in the second spot. Now, granted, yes, you can use their online model, but you can also, if you got the right hardware and horsepower, Aaron, you can set this up locally in your own area, network, etc. You could air gap it, blah blah blah. Is this a real threat to the American AI models that have trillion-dollar valuations and tons of capital being invested in them? Like, can you give us your perspective on this? Because I know this is something you're literally right involved in day in and day out.
So this is how China is trying to win the AI race. Is not necessarily through tech, but by destroying our AI businesses in the US. And so the way they do that is they try to create the best models they can and open source them.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's open sourced, you can potentially run it on your own hardware. A combination of things like this could cause what I believe to be a false AI crash, right? We could all be benefiting from AI more and more each day, but have the AI markets collapsing at the same time because you've got China releasing free models. And what if there's some technological advantage that comes out over the months or years that makes it so you don't need as much GPU to perform the same amount of work? And so you'll see less data center expansion and less data center acquisitions. At the same time, we're getting more benefits from the output of AI, but the market could be crashing because of this.
Yeah, amazing. It's wow. Yeah, Jonathan, any thoughts on this as you look at it?
Yeah, I mean, nothing really to add from what Aaron said. I mean, I think it's clear that a lot of folks are going to approach these models with a hefty air of skepticism, and in some cases, they're going to roll out clear. I think we've gotten to the point where there's some clear guidelines around what's okay to use in a corporate environment and what's not. But that said, a lot of people are going to gravitate these things because free is powerful, right? I think that you can try to lock that down as much as you can. It's going to be interesting to see. I think that the press that all these models get plays a big role in it. I mean, as we saw before with Deep, that got a lot of, I think, validation with the coverage that was involved over it. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, you want to jump to a next one there, and we'll talk about something that obviously impacts all MSPs when these types of things happen, and that is, Enable coming out with. Oops, sorry. Let me get there. We go. An unfortunate, an attackers exploiting an authentication bypass. Now, I haven't read through this thoroughly in depth, meaning is it their cloud, on-prem, etc. But Chris, any take on this so far? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I saw this just when some alerts started popping out. I saw one come through the GTI ISAL thread, and I think Huntress sent one out as well. And I know the Huntress alert said something of, we've detected some endpoints that you're monitoring are running in Central. So, I mean, it was not just Huntress telling you about this. It's Huntress saying, hey, it could be relevant to you. And that's the first I've seen it. So I really haven't heard anything. And usually you're going to hear a number of MSPs either falling victim of this or whatever the case. And I haven't heard any of that yet.
Okay.
But we could. And the other thing about N-Central is it's a more globally widespread RMM than what we see, typically. I mean, they have a good global footprint. So it may be hurting MSPs in other geographies around the world that we're not aware of yet.
Got it. Aaron, as somebody that, has run, large vulnerability management departments back in the days of Chase, a bank, and everything. When you see something like an authentication bypass, first off, for those out there that may not understand that, can you just give us a layman's? And then, is this a bigger systemic thing in code that an organization needs to look at? Like, I remember Ryan Weeks telling me all the time, like, hey, if we start seeing typically a certain type of flaw, we really need to look at how our code's being developed, etc. And I'm not accusing and Enable Act. I just wanted to get your thoughts on both of those.
I would give maybe a different view on software vulnerabilities. Like if there's a product that you use and let's say 20 vulnerabilities come out for it a month, it's only bad if every single month all 20 of those were found by threat actors. Now, if you have 20 vulnerabilities coming out a month and 19 of them are identified and remediated by the vendor, and now they're announcing them, those are fine. In fact, I would trust that vendor more. They're announcing vulnerabilities that they fixed before threat actors got to them. So I don't tend to judge a product by how many vulnerabilities are discovered each month. I judge them by who discovers them. Is it the vendor or a threat actor?
Got it. Yeah, well said, because we're seeing what records set every month now with Patch Tuesdays, and Microsoft is obviously getting them remediated. So, Jonathan, this obviously hits a little close to home, being another on-mem tool. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, nightmare scenario for anyone developing tools for MSPs, right? This is what keeps you up at night. And like Aaron said, I mean, I think, man, this is where we all live in glass houses, right? And this could definitely happen to anyone. We provide tools that provide a lot of access and a lot of capabilities. It's absolutely going to be a target. And I think that as I mean, even, the right of boom indicates, and everything that you cover, Andrew, and all the conversations that you've had here and at that conference and everything, so much, I think I judge people on how they react when it does happen, right? Like what they can control then after the fact. And it does look on this case. I mean, I saw it over the weekend. I felt for everyone at Enable. I saw a lot of chatter going around. The fact that they did jump on it, they had announcements out. They saw that the fix that they initially deployed out wasn't good enough. They developed another one. A lot of people acting quickly on there. My mind goes to, first of all, the customers, anyone who's impacted. See, the community's always been so good, and Huntress has led these efforts a lot, right? How do we help people? How do we notify them? How do we help lift them up when they're dealing with a really bad day? Because any of us can have a bad day.
For sure.
And then beyond that, Andrew, I know you're always thinking about in these terms. How does this impact potential reputation of RMM and MSP providers and MSP software providers overall? I mean, we've got the use of the abusive of RMMs has been growing more and more, and so we have that hitting headlines and everything. And then we see this. I mean, I think back to other major incidents and the impact that has. I think we all, as a industry in a space, we want to come together and make sure that we're all helping each other out and showing that we can do things the right way to really help with the broader perception of the space.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said. And Chris, what I would say is, on the margin, like the RMM tools, and let me be clear about what I'm saying RMM, whether in Enable, Ninja, Kaseya, etc., Automate, on the margin, you haven't heard a lot. The threat actors have been leveraging it, seemingly more of the remote control, which the tabloids or media keeps calling RMM, but the threat actors where they're leveraging those assist tools, if you will, are more the remote controls, not literally what we in the industry refer to as the RMM.
Yeah, more obscure stuff or stuff that as a mature MSP, you would not adopt for your clients, but a lot of them are either free or really low cost. And so they're doing that. I agree. And I agree that it's been relatively quiet around just, the larger, the vendors out there supplying RMM and PSA and everything. So I hate to say that we were due for one, but it does appear this one. And what's interesting about this one again is the fact that yes, they did act swiftly, but the point is what happened? Like, what was the failure? Was it just a single person failure? Was it a QC, QA issue with the original one and why it didn't work out properly? Did they rush it? That'd be kind of interesting to see if they come out and kind of talk about the mistakes that were made and what they're doing to correct those.
Yeah, I mean, I do view this as, it's an opportunity within Ninja. Let's make sure like we have our IR plans and everything. Let's do another tabletop. Let's look at it now, take advantage of the opportunity and make sure that we'll be able to do the right thing and provide as much info the right way as possible. So yeah, good reminder for everybody to stay ready.
I'm reading through the chat and I can't figure out how to respond.
You can't respond to the people in the chat.
So I'll respond audibly.
Yeah, verbally. Go ahead.
Someone was saying, hey, if a company is announcing 20 vulnerabilities a month, that there may be a problem. What we don't want to do is incentivize vendors to be quiet or to not look for vulnerabilities, right? So if we judge a vendor for doing the right thing, which is look for vulnerabilities, try to remediate them before threat actors, and announce that there was a vulnerability they remediated, if we penalize them for that, they're just not going to do it. We need them announcing these vulnerabilities in advance, and we all should embrace and support the community to do that as much as possible.
Well said. Aaron, I put the YouTube where if you kept it on mute, that would allow you to interact.
Okay.
So one downside of Restream is, unlike Crowdcast, all the co-hosts used to be able to interact, but only the host can do so. So
one last point, Andrew, about the RMM thing, maybe another any kind of tools, right? Especially with MSPs, there's a lot of client turnover and everything. Old tools get left behind and all that. Having something where I've seen, I think I even heard, I haven't seen this myself, but I heard that Huntress released something recently where it can help you spot other RMMs that you're not actively using, or setting up other monitoring. There's lolrmm.io, I think, is a site that helps you do that with some searches, and configuring some monitoring and alerting around that to make sure that, you don't have, in some cases, some older tools that something like this happens and you don't realize, you're like, we're not using that. It's all good. And then whoopsie, like there was still, evidence of it somewhere in your environment.
Yeah, that's where Chris blacklisting comes in really importantly, right? If you're not, trying to, hey, we're not using this, we're not using this, we're not using
or look for secondary instances that don't belong to you. That's equally as important. And then this comes up often where we see remnants of it could be we have a lot of MSPs who've gone through M&A, and there could be some in central just sitting in legacy somewhere. And they weren't aware of it or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of things that you need to keep track and stay on top of.
Yeah, that's a really good point of the M&A. And I'll close the banter with this because I was talking to a fairly large MSP that's been through a lot of M&A. And one of their number one initiatives right now is, cleaning up. Like, he's like, yeah, we got X amount of PSAs, X amount of RM. And it's like, he was like, it's staggering how many of each one when you start, doing these roll-ups.
It's probably a giant warehouse of historical MSP software. That's probably what the best analogy would be.
For sure. All right, let's get on into today before we introduce Aaron, which I think a lot of folks out here, I would argue, know. I wanted to talk about a subject that, isn't brand new, but is certainly one that is getting more and more attention. Aaron, I know you guys announced something about this at your event, specifically, and that's MCP servers. And I really wanted to get somebody that like lives in one thing I really respect about you, Aaron, is that not only you're a CEO, but you are in the thick of it, always innovating, not afraid to roll up your sleeves and literally, test and build. And, so your innovation is not just, hey, let's do this. It's, I want to prove this out. So when it comes to MCP servers, we're seeing many different use cases out there now, and reading about different use cases. And I really wanted to bring this to light to find out from your perspective, is this, another 3-letter acronym, Aaron, that, we can kind of push to the side for a few months, 6 months, 12 months, or is this something MSPs really got to start thinking about right away and, putting some cycles into, because if they don't, they're going to fall behind. So that's really the thesis of our topic today. So just in case one or two people out there don't know you, could you give a quick overview of Aaron and what you do these days?
Yeah, I was the CEO of Perch Security, and then I started Roost and became the CEO of Roost.
Yeah.
I focus on cybersecurity and automation. And these days, implementing AI and automation. And because marketing departments everywhere have used so many buzzwords to confuse us all, the difference between AI and automation is pretty easy. Like AI thinks, automation does, right? And so if you put the two together, you've got things changing because AI is initiating it. And MCP is a really important piece of that. But MCP is also not the boogeyman, right? If you're an MSP that's not doing anything with AI, then sure, you can ignore MCP if you want. If you're an MSP that does a lot with AI, MCP is more important.
All right. Well, with that, let's get into it, Jonathan. I'll hand it to you.
All right. Well, let's level set, Aaron. I would just want to see if you would explain like I do. For those of us, I'm sure everyone knows what an MCP server is at this point. But let's just say in asking for a friend, can you give me like a breakdown of just level setting? What's this all about in layman's terms?
Yeah. And I'm sure the audience out there has seen many people dancing around on stage screaming MCP excitedly, or marketing on LinkedIn, touting it. It's just
everyone knows we need more acronyms, right?
So, I know, right? Like touting it like it's insanely awesome. The important thing about MCP is it's neither good nor bad. It's just what we use. And we can say that about all of the standard things we do with computers, like TCP/IP. It's neither good or bad. Like you can find a lot of flaws in it and you can find a lot of benefits with it. Same with HTML. MCP is the same thing. As an industry, AI has standardized faster than I've seen other industries within IT. I mean, look at cybersecurity. It's still not standardized. And because of that, it's a lot behind technologically to other industries. AI starts to emerge, and what does it do? It starts to standardize really quickly because that's what it needs to do to survive. And MCP, think of it as it's just an API for an agent to talk to a product, which we'll also refer to as a tool.
And so what are some of the things that you can do? I mean, what are the differences between an API? I mean, if we have APIs and they provide, people at MSPs additional capabilities to get more out of their products, to customize. We have the APIs. Why do we need something different?
Well, first off, MCP does not replace a standard REST API, and a REST API does not replace MCP. They're separate use cases, and that's okay. That doesn't mean one is worse or better than the other. A REST API is really good at doing things like moving terabytes of data if needed. MCP absolutely will not support that. And that's okay because they're two completely different use cases. We need MCP, though, in the standardization because without it, every single time you had your agent do something like talk to QuickBooks, it would need to go research and figure out the REST API for QuickBooks. And then it would need to maybe go out and write some code to interact with it and then go execute it and then parse the results. That's way too many steps to be reliable. And if all of the major models didn't support it, they'd all have to research these REST endpoints every single time they needed to go interact with a product. But instead, we have this standard MCP, and now any product can emit MCP out as a service. And then a model can come in and discover and go, hey, what can I do? What can I do? What tools do you have? And then there's these nice, rich descriptions, and the model can learn on a single discovery everything that it can do to interact with a product.
So I've seen in one of our customers, David is here in the chat. Hey, David. You know, a lot of our in terms of the API use, before we started talking about MCP servers, with the API use, it really became, there's a subsection of NinjaOne users who are more power users. You know, they want to get in and they want to be able to customize and do different things. They want to be able to integrate with other products more seamlessly. And now they have an MCP server and they're able to utilize that, plug that in with their AI tooling as well, right? Are you seeing the same kind of, is this kind of an extension of that flow? Oh, we have more tooling that allows us to do some different things. What are the specific challenges that this really provides? And in NinjaOne's world, which we actually have an MCP server that's in early access. If you're using Ninja, you can ask to get access to it. But in NinjaOne's world, the API has long been kind of okay, NinjaOne natively won't do this for you yet, but you can do this on your own utilizing APIs. Is it the same thing for MCP servers now, Aaron, where people are basically doing the same thing, or is it helping them? I guess, what is it helping them most do? Is it helping them with integrations they wish they had, with more visualizations, or what are some of the things they're doing with it?
Taking a step back, David mentioned that there's overlap between MCP and REST, and there is overlap. I mean, but everything overlaps, right? Like they both use TCP/IP, they both use HTTP. Like, when does the overlap matter and when does it not matter, right? And when it comes to MCP, though, 100%, it would have to research and figure out the endpoints and write code to potentially interact with these endpoints if MCP was not available. So it's fewer steps, and every single turn on a model is expensive. So we want to reduce those turns and we want to increase accuracy. As far as the advantage for someone using MCP versus REST, like, you don't need to know software development, right? As long as your agent is connected to your product's MCP server, you don't have to go figure out what do the MCP tools provide. You don't have to figure out what does the REST API do. You can just ask your agent that's connected to go tell you what they can do. What can I do with this product that I've just connected to? Can you give me some use cases? Can you show me the MCP tools that I can use when I'm connected? But I think the most powerful thing is just dropping your business case into a prompt and letting your agent figure out what MCP tools from what products it needs to use to go fulfill your request.
I think about Roost as being so much at the forefront in terms of, we have a lot of mutual customers, and our partners who use Roost tend to be folks who are very capable on the engineering side, and they want to be doing more advanced things, right? I'm just kind of curious, how you saw, Aaron, with from Roost's perspective, demand for MCP server access. Any use cases people in your world have been showing off and everything. It just seems like such a great customer base full of people who are trying new and interesting things.
I think, well, everyone's got some level of MCP server demands from very technical or very enabled products or customers, right? But I'm trying to focus on the 80% and how do we get them to automate without learning how to automate. And what we announced at our last conference was the ability to connect your agent or use our agent to build automations for you. That's the message. But how do you implement that? You implement that with MCP. And I do think it's a little bit, people should focus on the value they're receiving and not necessarily the tools that you get there. Because if I went up and I announced MCP, I'm only, interesting 10% of the market. If I say, hey, look, you can describe your way to an automation, that's like 100% of the market. And oh, by the way, we have to leverage MCP to do that.
Hey, Aaron, question. Just made me think here as I'm a little bit I want to say flat, but it's pouring here in Tampa. So, but you made me think. When you said standardization, came like TCP/IP. It's like this era of cybersecurity. We missed it, and now AI adopted standardization. Is there a reason, do you feel, AI was able so quickly to adopt standards where cybersecurity's been around with, modern cyber, let's just say 20, 25 years, and they can't?
Because it all, this is all assumptions on my part, working in the security industry early in financial institutions. And it's because IT people made AI, technologists made AI, and security people did security.
Got it.
Yeah, I'd add on there real quick, Aaron. I mean, I think that it's moved so fast that bureaucracy hasn't gotten in there.
Yeah.
So I just know from even if you go from an IT perspective from the networking world, I mean, it took eons to get anything standardized in the networking world just because of all the layers and steps and time you had to wait for a response, and all this type of stuff to get something standardized. I mean, heck, by the time something got standardized, something new was already out there replacing it. I don't think AI has given bureaucracy a chance to get in here and kind of slow it down.
Except unless you want to put export controls on things like AI.
Yeah, the government, that's a whole different dimension on the government side.
Regardless, and this is important, regardless of whether or not Fable is good as a model, the U.S. government getting in the way of releasing that was basically handing China, hey, you've won, because we're holding back our models while they're not going to hold back theirs.
Yeah.
That was scary.
Yeah. Wow. And Aaron, so by the way, just since you brought this up, one more thing, Jonathan, I'll get back to you. The Mythos was too, when it was dubbed Mythos, was, just too dangerous to let out to the public. So we were going to get these large corporations, the Fed, the Treasury. Okay, now it's ready and comes out as Fable 5, but we're not going to, have the, types of awesome, security capabilities that were originally released in it. Are we hamstringing us and allowing the Chinese to leapfrog us, Aaron? Is that a real concern, or am I missing it?
No, I mean, as long as we don't put export controls or any way to throttle back the models that the U.S. companies releases, just get government out of the way and we'll be fine.
That's a tall ask when it's got to be the military's number one initiative for us to win AI, but we'll move on here. So,
well, I've got one more question. Then I'm curious to hear from Chris and asking Aaron some things about just the security angle of it, right? Giving additional access. I mean, that's the whole beauty of some of these tools is that it can allow you to really have data flowing back and forth, interoperability, like all that stuff is good, right? But of course, it comes with some security concerns. But before we get into that, though, Aaron, I'm just curious. I'll try to pull on it a little bit more. Is there, from what I've seen in the MCP server front, a lot of folks leveraging the capability that LLMs or AI models are good at, which is analyzing a lot of data, giving you an answer, in some cases visualizing things, helping you with dashboards and stuff like that. That's kind of where I've seen a lot of people gravitating towards early on with some use cases. I'm just curious if you've seen some other ones or if there's anything that's kind of jumped out to you in terms of like for folks watching, here's a very specific, like practical example of a use case.
I find myself trapping myself into thinking about only use cases, and I have to take a step back and go, oh, crap, like really I need to think about what AI is good at is knowledge work. And if I think about it that way, I come up with a whole bunch of new use cases. The most obvious is software development, right? And it's only getting better. Then more use cases, since I'm really focused on automation, are things like, workflow automation, creation of integrations into products, creating of apps that talk to integrations and workflows using AI. Like we see people, we have early access on our system and the stuff that they're building using AI on top of our MCP servers, things like quarterly business reviews. Like we see a ton of really cool automated QBRs, recovering from network or backup issues. And the thing is it's giving folks the ability to do a lot more trial and error. Like they can pick up a task, they can spend a few hours on it, they can either finish it or run into a roadblock, put it down, come back again, where it was more difficult when everything was manual before because you'd invest a week. And do you really want to put it down then and go pick something else up because you've got this time spent problem? And it's like, I've already spent a week. I need to finish this now. And so we see people working on a lot more things at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, Ivan, who's on this call, he put in a comment on LinkedIn, and I see one of them hit, but I didn't see this one hit. He gave a couple of examples, but one of them he's talking about is, I'll just quote him. He says, one of the engineers they were out unexpectedly, going through his open tickets. They hit one for a client implementation. Normally that means digging through emails, scrolling the ticket and piecing together, but instead he asked the MCP server to pull everything together and gave him a full recap. So here he had a kind of a real simple use case. Employees out unexpectedly. You need to figure out what's going on pretty quickly. For you to do that manually as a human being could have taken all day. Here, he was able to leverage that, compile it all, and it gave him the answers, and they were able to respond and deal with the customer, the client pretty quickly, even though the engineer was out.
That's a great one, Chris.
Yeah. Very good.
So, have you seen MSPs overcomplicate something?
Never.
MCP could have simplified. Yeah, I know. Or have you seen MCP used in a situation where it didn't belong?
Yeah, I mean, I see it from both sides, on the vendor side and on the MSP side, right? Like I see vendors trying to charge for their MCP service. Like, this wasn't a ginormous work effort for you to make the MCP server. And anything that provides more value around your product, you want people to use. You don't want to gate it by costing more money. And so vendors that have MCP servers, that should just be included in whatever your base fee is. I see the vendor mistake. And then on the MSP space side, it's almost worse if the MSP understands MCP, because they'll come out of the gate with the most complex use case ever. And that will be the first thing they try when they connect to the MCP server. Instead of just thinking of some really basic things, just to see if your connection is working, just to see if, are there some access controls around the token, MCP token you use, and were they configured correctly? Just some basic poking and prodding of things like, list my customers. Can you do a who am I on the MCP side, just to make sure it's responding before you jump into the most expansive use case ever, and then it doesn't work because of a configuration issue, and now MCP sucks and it's broken.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The one thing I see a lot of people are very smart people in the industry, but not a lot of them have the true software development experience, right? Or operations and understanding, hey, when I'm going to deploy some code now, what that means, what I should look for, what I should test. And you're exactly right. I think people just need to get a better understanding of that. We do have some people in the industry that are MSPs that do have software development experience, but a lot of them are engineers. And so they're getting into this new world, and it's great. It's fantastic. We can do some stuff that we would have to pay somebody else to do, but they're not understanding, just like you talked about, the impacts of that. I remember seeing somebody saying, MSP goes, they did all this stuff for a client, and then something changed and it all broke, right? So they had no process to deal with stuff of that nature when they were doing it. Now they had a customer that was upset because they had all this cool stuff that no longer works overnight. And so that's another kind of example where I see people are kind of stumbling with the operational use of this.
Chris, quick question to Aaron. Aaron, does MSPs love their tools, which is that's not a sarcastic statement, right? They just, it is what it is. Is there a danger that AI and MCP and things of this nature take MSPs' eyes off the ball? Hey, I'm paying $400 a month for this product. I'm going to vibe code it, connect it. I'm going to pay $300 for this one. I'm not saying they shouldn't evaluate simplification of their stack. Do we run into a danger here, though, of distracting MSPs of really what their core focus should be on, which is building their businesses? Can you see this being one of those shiny objects, if you will?
Well, it's two problems. You've got the hype cycle and the vibe coding thing. So the hype cycle of every new tech potentially has the ability to take your eye off the ball. Next, with the vibe coding, sure, you can replace your products and build them yourself. The issue that becomes, which products are you going to do? All of them? And if you replace all of your products, even though it's quicker to do development, depending on the complexity of the product, that's not a weekend job. It could take a month or two. We have a saying, 80% done, 80% to go, right? The more you get done, the more you realize you don't have done. And if you decide to do all of your software products yourself, you could end up paying more than if you would have just paid for a subscription, right? Token costs, the headcount to actually run the agent, to spend the tokens, And it's not a one-time cost because now you're supporting your products that you built. And this is not an anti-vibe code your stuff position. Like, just pick the products you're going to do well. And it may not end up being all of your products that you decide to do that with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think I'll add to that, Andrew, that because you and I were talking about this a little bit too, and there's the ongoing time and cost of ongoing maintenance, right? Upkeep. What happens when it does break, and then you have to go troubleshoot that instead of just paying attention to the client and developing good service. But then there's also just the idea. Well, I remember thinking, having a conversation with a customer who was doing some Halo PSA help for implementation help with others. And they had it down. The process was down in their own shop. They decided to start helping out others. And they're like, hey, should we start rolling this out as our own service? And it's like, well, yeah, but now you got your own side business going on. And can you really run your main business effectively when you have the side business going on? And when you're talking about developing software, it's one thing to build it, but then can you do it securely? Also, are things documented? Like it's are you actually doing the documentation, all those things that you talked about, Chris, that comes with like professional software development and everything. So that way, if you do have the one person that was vibe coding everything, they get hit by the bus. Where are you at then?
Or legal structure, right? Should you be doing this under the same LLC or whatever corporate structure you have as well? That's another example. I mean, another thing you have to be thinking about when you're getting into this. And not to bring this into it, go too much on a tangent, but does your cybersecurity policy that you have as a provider cover you for any type of software defects or anything that you do as a result of your coding? And that's a great question that I can't answer, because I do think that in a lot of cases, cyber insurance hasn't caught up to that yet. So your policy may not even cover that. So if you screw something up or something happens as a result of that, and you think you can go and put a claim on your policy, you might find out the hard way that it's not going to work.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chris, back to you.
Yeah, let's go. So, hey, so let's talk, since integrations is your world, Aaron, talk about how MCP is going to fit in. Will it replace a lot of the integrations that are already been done, whether that's integrations that vendors have done between each other or MSPs have put in place? Kind of talk about how it fits into that world.
I don't think it replaces it. I think that products that interact with each other directly without an agent will continue to do so using the same exact APIs that they do today. It's just that the agent now has an easier ability to do it. I do think that to some degree, interoperability between products is maybe a little less required, because your agent can act as kind of a gateway for small amounts of data between products. Because you could say something like, check my QuickBooks for these accounts, labeled this in my PSA. That is two different products working together, but it's your agent using MCP between the two products to do the thing.
Yeah. No, that's a really good perspective there, and I think you're right. I mean, it's there's so many times where MSPs have been demanding from vendors, you need to do this, this, and this, and now they're going to be even more empowered to not even have to ask and request those things, because they're going to be able to get it done themselves. If an MSP if they're on here and they're watching this and they're starting from nothing, what should their first MCP server touch? I know you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what should they do?
If they're starting from nothing and this is their first foray into AI, they shouldn't touch MCP. It's kind of like, why go to intermediate level when you haven't mastered beginner? right? And so master beginner first, right? Get your local LLM client set up. Try a few things locally, or whatever web-based LLM you're using. Try it there. Get familiar with what it does, how well it works, what it can and can't do. Then bring MCP into the mix. Because how are you going to understand the value of MCP if you don't know how an LLM works without MCP?
But Aaron, let's assume they do know like they're reversing LLMs. They're starting to get their agents. Like, is there a easier use case? Hey, this is start here. Look for low hanging fruit here. Is there an area you would direct somebody?
I would do an audit of my tools, and you could do it as simply as maybe even asking your model the question, right? Which of my tools support MCP? Okay. And then the one you understand the most and maybe use the most, that would be the one that I would set up. And you can even ask your model, how do I set up MCP for this tool? And it'll tell you how to set it up. Okay. And then once it's set up, then ask your model, okay, I've set you up. You're connected. What can I do? Give me some ideas. And your agent will do an MCP discovery and go see what tools are available and give you ideas, showing you the value of what you just connected to and why.
Chris, if I could humor me with one more question to Aaron. Aaron, okay, great idea. I'm going to go do that. Let me be clear on the question. Do I need to be concerned about security? And what I mean by that is security that I didn't realize I needed historically because I've never done connecting agents to MCP. Or is it inherent? I don't have to worry about it.
I guess, one thing is understand the MCP client you're using. They're not all created equal. Okay. Think of them as like a web browser. There are crummy ones and there are good ones. Mm-hmm. And it can dramatically impact the capabilities and the costs around using it if it's a crummy MCP client. Some good ones, self-explanatory. Claude Code, Codex, both really good MCP clients. Mm-hmm. And then security-wise, think of your MCP token as a user.
Okay.
And from the product that's issuing the token, can you do least privilege on that token? Or do they have RBAC that you can associate a role to that token? Just be aware of the privileges that the MCP token has with the products that you're integrating with.
That's great advice.
Well, yeah, because what people are learning the hard way is they're finding out that token has more access than they thought it had. And it does some pretty extraordinary things, maybe things they weren't expecting for good and some things they weren't expecting for bad. So, and I would say, the cost thing is a big deal, especially, you're doing stuff for yourself. That's one thing, but you're doing stuff for clients and something goes cost-wise erratically. That's going to be a big issue. And the other thing, I think that this is the number one question I get from the business side, not from technical people, because I've been doing a ton of risk assessments lately, and I'm bringing this subject up. And the number one question is how do I know? Like, I talked to somebody, the director of HR, chief people officer, somebody like that, and go, yeah, I have a lot of data out there. How do I know that data is going to be secure, that something's not going to access that shouldn't? I'm like, yeah, that's another thing you got to be thinking about is your data, the data that's being accessed. If you think that through the AI layer that you can handle all the control and you don't have to secure your data, you're missing it. Your data has to be secured in the first place and properly categorized and all that kind of good stuff. Because if it's not, it's going to be open season for these agents and such. And you're going to find out the hard way that things are going to do things that you didn't want them to do. Yeah, and I'll hand it back to you, John. I mean, we covered those things, and I think we've covered security now.
Yeah.
I do have one question about just whose responsibility is all this, and I mean, surely it's going to vary depending on the MSP, right, and the team that you have. But I mean, I'm just curious from what you guys have seen and what you would recommend is making sure that governance is implemented and being thought of. There's a dedicated person responsible for that, kind of sitting outside of the flow. Is that the ideal way to go? I know that's probably not always possible, but what do you guys, any recommendations there?
Andrew, could I talk a minute on our on the product releasing, because it completely is around this. It's part of cybersecurity. If we reduce cybersecurities down to detecting or preventing incidents, what happens before that? You have to have an event. And whether or not you see the event is another story, right? But an event occurs. And the only way that you know whether or not an event occurs is to have the ability to observe what's going on. So, my feeling of cybersecurity is observability is one of the most important things. And right now, MCP is really not observable. Your client connects to a product, and that product may or may not log anything that an MCP event occurred, right? And so one of the things in our early access product we have is Fabric, and it includes an MCP proxy. It only shows 2 tools to your MCP client. One of those tools allows it to do discovery, and the other tool allows it to execute. And then we log it in a UI that's searchable and forwardable to your SIM. All the MCP commands that have occurred from that client to give you that observability. So I think before we think about how do we get MCP secure beyond just user controls and least access, the next step is observability on what's happening on the MCP layer.
Got it. So you're seeing a lot of them not provide the logging and, ability to actually audit what just transpired, if you will.
Yeah, the logging is not what you need to monitor from a security perspective. It may be more programmatic logging and not logging that who did what when that you're going to need. And I'm going to tell you, in this world, you're definitely going to have CYA logging, because if something goes astray, you need to be able to have that evidence to figure out what happened really, really quickly, and to be able to support it and see, who was at fault or what was at fault. Because it's the rush is coming with these types of events or these types of incidents occurring out of this, and the lack of evidence is pretty scary to these world.
That's interesting. So Aaron, do you feel the what percent, maybe, I know this is a swag, I know we're at the top of the hour here, but I guess probably differently. You said you can ask your MCP server, questions. Could you say, hey, do you log events and things of that nature? Will it tell you, or is that something you're going to have to go do some due diligence on, documentation, et cetera?
You're going to want to do due diligence on it. Whether or not an MCP server logs things well is not something that they'd put in a tool description or a discovery request. And if you ask your agent that, likely it's just going to go search the internet, search Reddit or whatever. So you could do it that way, or you can just log into the product and go look.
Okay. Fantastic, Aaron. This is really, really awesome. I appreciate you spending some time with us on a Monday here, the first one in August. And always grateful for the, camaraderie and helping the community, Aaron. Much appreciated. Jonathan, Chris, really appreciate it. Everybody that joined in, really appreciate you sharing your afternoon with us. Obviously, if you want to watch this again, it'll be at the same URLs. And if you want the audio on podcast, we'll have it out there later.
Yeah, there's a lot of great comments today and great advice from people in the comments. I've noticed that. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, great stuff, guys. All right, wishing you all be safe, healthy. We'll see you next Monday. Take care, all.
If you're in the Write a Boom community but not in our Discord yet, you're missing where the real conversation happens. Join community.writeaboom.com to access cybercall discussions, upcoming CTFs, boom camps, and early access to what's coming next. If you want to stay close to what's actually happening in the MSP security space, I'll see you there.